Good
Good
morning.
morning, Chris.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Good morning, everybody joining us live this Saturday morning. The weekend begins here with the Chris and Gloria's live chat show, Open Minds. How have you been, Chris?
I've been really good. Yeah, I've had an exciting week. And very interesting, Gloria.
Very interesting week. And how far have you travelled today to the show? Kitchen? Bathroom?
At least 13 steps, maybe a bit more.
I know. I've actually extended my journey this morning. I come from the garden this morning. The sun's shining here. It's a spring day. It's warm in the Hot Fuzz village. It's beautiful. It's like stepping it's like stepping into summer. Kevin the squirrel's been running around eating his nuts and lard balls. So it's been a wonderful week, and it's a beautiful day here in the Hot Fuzz village. So, Chris, today we have the amazing Chris Fowler. Now, we've been talking for days how excited we are. And Chris is a rescue medium. He's an investigator of the paranormal, from the basic hauntings to the poltergeist activity. And he'll be joining us today in a few minutes, and he'll be sharing his journey and some amazing experiences. And God, we've been so excited for this one because I love all things paranormal.
He's afraid of the dark.
So, I mean, obviously the show is offering weekly diverse topics under the umbrella of spirituality, as we stated. And our future shows, we also have some amazing guests coming forward. We have psychic mediums, we have conscious channelers, we have best-selling authors. It's the diversity is immense. And we thank all our audience, all our viewers, because without you, the show wouldn't be here. So thank you once again, everybody, for joining us on Open Minds. So, Chris, I was wondering, as much as I love to chat, today I'm going to try very hard.
Worries me that when you say that.
I'm going to try very hard today to allow you, listen to the word allow, to ask a few of the questions. Because viewers, I've got to admit, Chris, the two Chris's, I'm going to get confused today. It doesn't take much, but we've got two Chris's on the show to ask some pertinent questions, because the two Chris's actually know each other. And I have blackmailed Chris Fowler to reveal an experience with Chris Shearer. So hopefully today some secrets will come out. So Chris Shearer, would you like to get out of the naughty room? Our guest today, Chris Fowler.
Certainly.
Hi, good morning, Chris and Gloria.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
I was just thinking about that story I'm going to tell in a bit.
I know, it's so exciting, isn't it?
It is.
I know. Good plan. Good plan. Seriously, thank you so much, Chris Fowler.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Sorry to call you Chris Fowler because of the two Chris's. We spoke to you a few weeks ago to hear your journey, your story, and it's just so fascinating. And we open the forum for you today to share your story, inspire, encourage others. And there's so much interest out there in the paranormal events. Yes. So the first question is, where did it all begin with you, Chris?
I think when I look at sort of my journey and where it started, I think it'll probably resonate with a lot of people. And I know it resonates with Chris because we have had the opportunity to speak about it in the past. I can sort of trace it back to a very, very early age. One of the key things was that fear of the dark. I hated it. It was terrible. It was when it comes to lights out at night, it was the worst thing in the world ever for me. And I'll always remember, I had my bed up against the wall, there's a telly across the room, and when I got in bed, my little routine was the feet were tucked under, the cover at the bottom. I always had to face the wall, and I'd literally sleep with my face against the wall. And it wasn't just the dark that I was scared of, but I constantly had this feeling And looking back on it now, I don't think it was a negative. But for me, there was always someone stood by the side of the telly. And if they weren't stood by the side of the telly, I could hear them walking down the landing just outside the door. And it absolutely terrified me. And I think if my mum's watching, she'll probably sort of remember. Back then, I used to have like a little night light, or I'd have to have the light on, or the door ajar. And that's, I think, where I can first sort of signal or first pinpoint my sort of entrance into all that is spiritual or paranormal. I think one of the key things for me when it comes to my experiences as a child was I was at my uncle's one night with my cousin. We were staying over. We stayed up watching a film. I think it was What Lies Beneath. That's how much I can remember back then. I was probably about 10, 11 years old. My uncle's house, I don't know whether you know Runcorn at all, but it's not too far from Norton Priory. Quite famous for its history, obviously, and it does have a lot of tales of hauntings. And the area that he's in, each house, because I think he's been in 2 houses there, he's had paranormal experiences in both houses. So me and my cousin are up late. We've watched this film. My cousin goes upstairs. I'm lying on the couch, and where the couch is, just across from it, there's this like big glass cabinet, and behind me is a doorway. So I'm there. I'm getting settled. I think I'm still a bit antsy over the film that I've just watched.
I've actually seen that film. That film. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I was about 10, 11 years old. I'm lying down on the couch, and as I'm looking over in front of me, there's like a reflection in this glass cabinet. And where the doorway is, all I see is a very, very solid black figure. And this figure comes across from the doorway, stops, and it's as if it's facing to the stairs. And my whole, I can't even explain it. Everything was on pins. I was completely frozen. I mean, frozen solid. To top it off, and what made it worse for me, the spirit behind me didn't just stop, but it actually stopped and then turned its head to the side as if it was looking directly in the reflection.
Wow.
And that was, I honestly can't explain the feeling. It was utter just fear. It was like everything from my childhood. The reason why I always kept facing the wall, the reason why I was always tucked under, everything sort of come to a head there and then. And It was unreal for me. And so it felt like a lifetime. It was probably only a couple of seconds, but it really, really felt like it just an absolute age. The spirit turned its head back and just walked upwards as if it was walking up the stairs. And I remember for a couple of minutes, I just couldn't move. And I was just absolutely frozen, couldn't move. I sort of tried to call out because my uncle, he's one of them characters, he will have a play about whether he will, he's a bit of a wind-up. So I tried to call out and I just couldn't get the words out. I say about a minute or two later, I managed to sort of pull myself out of it. I jumped up and I thought, it's my uncle. It was him, he's winding me up. So I ran to the door and there was no one there. I called up the stairs and tried to listen. I could actually hear my uncle snoring upstairs. I went to the back door, no one there, no one in sight. And all I sort of remember is I can't say what I shouldn't have had that swear word in your head beginning with S. Sort of give that one of them a bit of a shout. Ran back into the living room and I put the cover up and I don't think I slept. I think my cousin said when they come down in the morning, I was just wrapped up in this cover, still like traumatized by it all. But I think that's very important for me because I think that was a point when for me, when you look at it, I think kids have like an innate ability to be able to, I don't know whether you'd say communicate, but detect at least and sense and feel the paranormal around them. And I feel like that point for me was like the shutters just came down and I was cut off from everything. I did not want to ever experience anything like that again. And despite the fact that I'd had all these little things in the past with sensing and feeling I just shut down. I did not want any involvement with it whatsoever. It absolutely traumatized me. I was just terrified by it. And I think from that point, like I say, I really shut myself off. Whether that's consciously or subconsciously, I can't really say. It closed. And it stayed that way, I think, for quite a few years. I suppose I'd sort of see or sense things and I'd immediately shut it down. And I think when I was in my sort of late teens, I moved into a house on my own. It was like my first house. And often when there was like I'd say it was like early 1900s, the house was built, like a terraced house. And often when I'd come up to the stairs in the property, so the bottom of the stairs, I'd always get this really, really strong smell of like an older woman's perfume. And every time I smelt it, I'd literally run. I didn't want to look up the stairs. I knew that if I looked up the stairs, I just had this feeling like deep inside that if I was to look up the stairs, then I would see something that I didn't want to or wasn't ready to see. And I would honestly, if you saw me, you'd think I was crazy, because I would actually physically run and get out the way of it. And there was all these sort of things going on in the house. And I was my thing to it was escape from that situation. I couldn't engage it.
I do think, though, that's a common formality with most spiritual experiences. The very beginning is the fear, the dark, the running away, shutting it down. Yes, I've slept with the face on the wall and run up the stairs with eyes shut because I don't want to see. So I think it's a very common, it seems to be part of a spiritual process that we all tend to go through at the very beginning, until we come and have a greater understanding of what actually is going on. But yes, please do continue, Chris.
So I'd say them sort of experiences like that happened continuously. I mean, it didn't matter. There was a couple of properties where I lived where I'd get these sort of similar experiences, and my attitude was always shut it down.
Yeah,
it's not. I can't deal with it, and I'd hide away from it. And I think very much it stayed that way until I'd say my late 20s and later on in my life, where I was still picking up on these things. I was still having these sort of feelings, and rather than that fear was starting to gradually go away, and I was getting to this more confident place in my life. And a good few years back, met my fiance, and she's been great in like my journey. When I met her, she was very much into going on paranormal investigations, and her mum and the family and friends very, very much into, you call them ghost hunts. I mean, I call them paranormal events because it sounds a bit more respectful, but ghost hunts, ultimately, they love going on ghost hunts. My mother-in-law as such and my fiance are both quite sensitive. Very much, they have their own way of picking up on things on an emotional level. So when we met and she told me about what she was doing and what she went on, I just jumped at the chance. I thought, this is a chance for me to like overcome my fears. And rather than sort of thinking, oh, you're a bit crazy, I don't want to get involved. And I was all in, fully invested. I really wanted to go and experience. So that's sort of where the next phase started, because from that, I think it was just like, I couldn't believe this like experiences that you could have. I was so much into it from the very first event that we went on. I was hooked, and it was a bit. It's a bit like an adrenaline rush in a way. That's the best way I could describe it. Some people might like to go to, like, theme parks or whatever for their rush. That rush for me became going on paranormal events, and each time.
So when you,
I'm sorry.
Sorry. When you're on your first event, your first time out, after going through all of that, and you said, "This is me. This is my journey. This is where I'm going." What was it like on the first one? I mean, What happened? What happened that?
I think as much as I'd sort of built myself up, like, here we go, let's go, I think the majority of the night I spent walking around holding my partner's hand. If I'm honest.
You didn't run then, Chris, no.
Hiding behind there all night.
Oh no!
Honestly, as confident as I sort of built myself up, when it came down to it, it was that, because when you're on an event, you'll have like your sort of meeting room, and then the rest of the building will be in darkness. So then I wasn't just walking into this thing and opening myself up to the possibility of finding spirits. I was also going back to that fear of a child where I was thrown into this dark. So
Lord,
I think. Well, sorry.
Where was you at? Where was your first event? Do you remember?
I think my first one was at St. Catherine's, which is in Doncaster, and it's an asylum. Built on the grounds of an old sanatorium, hospital, asylum. They always like to say everywhere's an asylum, but the majority of the time,
just throw you in the deep end, Jen. Straight in the deep end. Asylum, like.
For me, I've always had, and I know it's like going off a second, but I've always had a fascination with the old sort of Victorian lunatic asylums, etc. Because I myself, I struggle with like mental health related issues, and I think it's a very sad thing that the slightest thing back then and you'd have been thrown away lock and key. And I think I still, to this day, I wouldn't say I love to visit. I do have a bit of an obsession where if you were to give me an option of where to go, I'd look to the asylums, because there's that attachment. I think that could, in a different time, in a different age, that very could have easily been me in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, all of us would have been thrown in there, wouldn't we, really? Mediums a lot. We've all been in the asylum. Can I ask a question on that? Because you've touched upon it. Like, you've gone into this asylum, it's all dark. Now, I know personally, because I come from my career field where I've worked with mental health or schizophrenia or psychopathy and things like that. In the daylight, being around the energy, there's the intuitive sixth sense, flight or fright. So you're dealing with what you can physically see or hear. I mean, I cannot imagine seeing myself going into a dark asylum there with the energies in there. There's no physical perception. No. I can't even contemplate how your sixth sense or your inner self could just go through that. I mean, I think I would just be so fearful I may drop dead. I mean, it would just be too much for me.
That is the way I felt that first time. That is the way I felt. It was very odd, because I think even from that first time, putting myself in that situation felt like I was like unlocking that door that had been locked a long time ago, and I was starting to pick up and sense things around me. And the ghost hunting was fantastic, because it was like the entry for me back into that sort of reality of that is there, and you can't keep ignoring it all the time.
No, you sort of overcome it. You've overcoming the fear in gradual stages, overcoming until eventually we all get to the point where we don't fear the dead, as we call them, and we fear the living. There is nothing to fear from spirit, obviously. So I can visualize, how, well, I'd say you're very brave. Braver than you, Chris Shearer, obviously. Very brave.
So,
do go on. Sorry, do go on.
So I think from there, like I said, it's like that bit of a drug. It's like a high. Even though it was that fear, I was like hooked, and I was really intrigued. And it was just so great. It was fantastic. I can't explain it. That sort of feeling, that buzz that you get from it. And from there, I just wanted to go every weekend if I could. If I could afford to. Sadly, ghost hunting can be quite expensive. But I would have gone every weekend. So we started going on a more regular basis. And one thing I started to find which piqued my interest a little, it was, like I say, I started being able to open up and pick up on things more. And what I'd find is, in circumstances where they were doing board work, glass work, like seance type, I tended to get a very, very, as I was growing in confidence a little bit more, I started realizing that I was getting a lot of sort of contact that other people maybe weren't getting, and I was sort of being able to provide evidence. And in a communication standpoint, I was really, I could sit there, and it got to a stage where people would be asking questions out loud. You could have a medium there, and I'd already know the answer to the question as the question was coming out. So I could feel like this sort of development. It was very natural. I know you could say the situation might be forced in the sense of going and searching, but that sort of progression was very, very natural.
I think it's natural. I think anyone within the paranormal spirituality, or anyone, basically anyone, we limit ourselves to our belief system, what we think we can do. We look outside. I think going through a process like yourself, you unlimit yourself. You realize, I can do this. I don't need permission to do this. I don't need to be trained to do this. This is who I am. So I think it's our limited belief systems that we've come along with. They start to drop, and you go, oh, I can do that. And that builds the validation, builds the confidence, and then makes you very good at the skill that you're doing. So I totally understand where you're coming from on that one. Okay, do go on.
So
you know what, Chris? I've never been so quiet. I'm so interested in this. Do go on, Chris.
So obviously, like I said, we're getting into this now. We're going on our ghost hunts, and I remember one night myself and my partner were both approached by a medium on one of the events, and he basically, he was sort of, we were a bit of a regular of this group, and he basically said, well, look, I see what's sort of going on the nights. Have you ever thought about developing as a medium? So me and my partner were a bit, we weren't sure, and as much as I had that interest and I'd like to have developed a little bit, I just, as I say, I won't mention any names, but I just didn't feel like he was the right person. I think you've got to find that right person when you're in that beginning stage of development. You have to find the right person you're comfortable with, who you can relate to, and you can see yourself developing with. And he wasn't the person, and it wasn't the time. So we had a chat about it, but it never really, we never pushed on it. We never progressed with it. And then a couple of months later, through my fiance's mum and friends of the family, we met a guy called Richard, and Richard was very much just this, like, the knowledge he has of the paranormal was absolutely phenomenal. And he was setting up a paranormal investigation group called Gear. And he basically sort of said to me, obviously your mother-in-law's said that Joanne would be really interested to get involved, and he said at the moment it's just all women, and I'd love another male, so would you come in and would you have a chat? And we went along to a few meetings, we chatted a lot, and it ended up, me and him got on like house on fire.
Brilliant.
And sadly Richard passed away last year, but he was such an integral part of like my journey in terms of the paranormal investigation. We set up like events privately at first, and he was brilliant. There was so much knowledge he had, and he'd sit us down in classroom environments and train us, and he'd show us how to use equipment and what the equipment was for. And he was just, he was brilliant. He really just so full of knowledge.
You know, when you look at your story, it seems to have just opened and flowed exactly as it should into meeting your dear friend Richard, where some training is needed, some tools, and we're going to see some of the tools today. You brought them along, so you hold them up so we can talk about them. So I suppose at that point, you'd done a few events, you realise, you are part of an event coordinator, or you're going to do these shows, or you're going to do these events. But I think by then, had you realised this is my path, this is my purpose, this is where I'm going with this?
I think very much so. I was fully invested. It became like our life, mine and my partner, especially like Richard and his daughter. Every single weekend sadly, we'd have to get in touch with my partner's sister and do you mind looking after the kids for a few hours? And we'd jump in the car and we were driving everywhere that we could. And I was, like I said, absolutely hooked. I just wanted to go everywhere. I wanted to experience every location. And we had such a great time.
Can I ask you at this point, can I ask you, so up to date, what has been the most scary out your pants experience you've had as a brave Ghostbuster?
So, if I bring Chris in, sort of. So, when I was at the Paranormal with Richard, Richard did a lot of charity work for kidney trusts, and through Richard at charity night, I met Chris. Chris was doing stand-up mediumship for the charity event. We got chatting. We got on very well. So I'll come back to this later so I can get into the story. But I did end up going where I declined the other medium in the past. Chris was the person who I connected with, my partner connected with, and we ended up going to development groups with Chris, and that was sort of yeah. So one night, me, Chris, Karen, and Joe, my partner, and a few other people. There is a derelict abbey in, well, it's a church, but it's called Lydia Abbey. So we got in our cars and we went down there for the night. The weather was appalling. It was soaking wet outside, everything damp, really dark, and it is your stereotypical, if you were to sort of think of something that strikes a fearsome image. This church does. It's the dilapidated church, the old gravestones knocked over.
You took Chris Shearer there.
I took Chris Shearer there. I took Chris Shearer there.
Do go on.
And the place, to get to it, you park on a car park. So to get the full of the story, we parked up on the car park. We've walked down the road, and across the road from the entrance to the church, there was a marquee and a party. That's important to remember for later in the story. So there's this marquee and party across the road. When you go into the abbey, you sort of cut in through a little gate, and it's like a wooded area. It's, like I say, it's really that sort of horror-esque sort of setting. It's surrounded in the woods.
It looks like a Christopher Lee film, you know, the Christopher Lee old school film. You know, like, oh gosh, yeah, do go on.
It really has all that about it. So you can actually access the church because, like I said, it is derelict, old stone. So we're all stood sort of, we've all done our little bit. We're all stood in the middle of there, picking up on a few little things here and there. And I remember if you look out, there's sort of like a tower area and this big open window where it used to be. And we're all sort of stood huddled there. And when you looked up, I think it was, I'm not sure if it was me, my partner, or Chris first, but someone spotted what looked like a shadow, a silhouette moving through these wooded area around the background. So Chris said he saw it. I said I'd saw it. So I think it might have been Karen. Why don't you go and have a look, Chris? Make sure there's no one there. So Chris goes off. And I love you to bits, Chris, but Chris isn't. You're a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to stuff like that, aren't you? But fair play to Chris, though. He did go off on his own. And Chris is in these woods and he's like, I can't see anything, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking through and other people looking through, and where Chris is, you can see this silhouette not far behind. So I shouted over to Chris, and Chris come back. I think everyone was a bit tentative at this point. Everyone on a bit of pins. Everyone waiting for what's going to happen next. And the thing that was very strange about it was, because with it being a church, you expect nothing but light. You expect it to be positive, a sense, that holy place. And what we were getting from it was very, very a negative feeling attached. Now, where we saw this black silhouette, within a couple of minutes, we kept seeing like red lights between the trees. Me and Chris went together. I think at this point we went over to check that there was nothing behind these trees, where we were just trying to debunk it, basically, that there was nothing there that could be producing these red lights. And we looked around, we looked off into the distance from behind the tree line, and there was nothing whatsoever that could have caused it. So we've gone back into the church again. We're all sort of, I think a few of the people there, well, maybe we should move on for the night, maybe we should go somewhere else. And nope, this is my jam, this is what I'm into. I want to be here, this is what I want to experience. I want these sort of. So I was dead keen on it. I don't think anyone else was.
You wish for. You go on.
I don't think anyone else was that keen.
No.
So we went to the left side of the building and the outside of the building. I remember I was sat down, and when I'm connecting with spirit, I sort of go into like a mild meditative state. So I'm sat there, I'm trying to concentrate, I'm shutting everything out around me and concentrating on just whatever it is, and there's these red lights still appearing in the bushes. And I've got to be honest, I was quite scared at this point because that silhouette that was in the woods, I literally heard a rustling in the trees and it felt like something ran towards me.
Oh gosh.
Chris picked up on that. Other people picked up on that. And everyone, I think at that point, everyone wants to go. I'll hold my hands up as much as it got to me. I still wanted to be there because I wanted to find out exactly what it was in the trees. Yeah. But everyone else had thought, nope, that's it. We're gone. So everyone's about to pack up and go, and everyone's grabbed their own bags from outside the church. And I turn around and go, hang on a minute, all of our equipment's inside. I was like, is anyone going to come back in with me? Chris was gone. Chris was not going. There wasn't anything that I could do to get. Chris was not having.
Chris, you legged it. Chris, you legged it. Go on.
As much as it was that terrifying experience, something really, really lovely came out of it for me, because as I was going back up there, I did have that sort of hesitation, and I sort of said, if there's anyone here with me now to give me that little bit of support, and I'm not talking to the people there, I'm talking spirit-wise.
Yeah.
And one of the people who I often feel really attached to in the spirit world is my nan, my granny. She passed away years ago, and she was like the most lovely person you could ever meet. And I know everyone says that about the nan, but she really was. She was truly an absolutely remarkable person. And I remember just saying in my head, I was saying, if my spirit guides here, sort of give me a bit of strength that I need. I was like, Granny, if you're there, please. And as I stepped through the entrance to the church and back in, and very much there was not a bird in the sky. There was nothing around, no birds. And this, as my foot stepped through, this white feather just came literally floating down from the right hand side and landed right in front of me. And I just knew, I was like, you're there with me, thank you. And I picked her up, I put it in my pocket, and I just felt like this overwhelming, like a warmth, and there was just nothing bothered me. There was no fear. I walked in, dead casually picked up all the stuff, went down, met up with everyone else at the front gate, and we all started talking. We decided we were going to move on from there because the signs were there that we needed to go. And one of the people who was with us basically said, so to me, because I know red lights and orbs have different sorts of meanings of interpretations for different people. So for some, it can be like a protecting, and people like, in this circumstance, what would you say? And I was like, that's a danger sign to me. That's a sign you need to go. So if we go back right the way to the beginning where I started there, I mentioned this party in the marquee. So that's going on across the road, and there's like a disco, and we're talking, and Karen stopped everyone, and she was like, can you hear that? And we were like, well, I didn't know the song myself. I'd never heard it. And it was red lights spell danger.
Talk about synchronicity.
And it was, and I mean, coincidences happen. But for me, that sort of coincidences beyond coincidence.
I don't believe in coincidences. That's too direct.
It was so direct. And I think that was it. Chris was gone. Karen was like, nope, not staying here. I'm gone. Papana was gone.
Bye, Chris. Wow. I mean, can I ask you, can I just touch on that before we move on? What do you think the red eyes, lights, energy was in hindsight now? What do you really think it was?
For me, the connection that I was sort of getting with whatever it was there, I don't know whether I could say it was a spirit or I wouldn't. One thing I'll say straight from the off is I'm not going to go down this demon path or anything nothing like that.
No, absolutely not.
For me,
no.
But it wasn't like any spirit that I'd ever connected with before. There was just an emptiness, and it was very like malevolent feeling or anger, or this was all the sort of what we were getting from it. And I was adamant that I was staying and I wanted more.
Yeah.
And to the point where people were telling me, you need to go. And I was, no, I want to know more.
Yeah.
For me, them red lights was, I wouldn't say it was solely for me, but I think them red lights, in my interpretation, that is a danger sign. That is, you're messing with something you shouldn't mess with. It's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
So them red lights for me were that warning. It was like, look, you're pushing your luck now. It's time to go. So there was no other explanation for what they were. That's one thing that's for sure. There was nothing that they were, and for me, like I said, it was something that was put there as a stone cold message that, look, you're messing with something that you shouldn't be messing with. It's time you go. And I mean, we can't be 100% sure because we did move on to somewhere else because that paranormal bug. But when we got back, or when Chris got back, Chris took off. Chris had about 10 layers on, I think, that night. And when Chris took like his 10 coats and jumpers and jackets and all the rest off, he had actually been scratched right through underneath all of them. So I think when it gets to that stage where you are physically at risk, I should have known better maybe to move out the situation. But like I said, that's...
I mean, it's part of, I think, the spiritual journey, experiencing different energies. We only have our own perceptions or beliefs. So like, I'm like yourself, I don't follow the demons. To me, there's no such thing as demons. There's different energies, there's different form of consciousness, different shapes of consciousness. And like when we were younger, our first instinct is fear, it's always fear. That's the first. And as I would suggest, when you were younger and you had that fear when you went to your uncle's house, and then over the years, through, I would say, discernment, you start to understand there really is nothing to be afraid with. I think in that case, you will, I agree with your experience. I mean, I'm sure I would have run with Chris if I'd been there. However, it's like a taster to a different type of energy, not necessarily negative, not necessarily, fearful. However, over time, you may have a better understanding of this energy that is now being brought into your awareness. So, I mean, you're so brave. I think you're so brave. I mean,
we'll be going back. Chris might not want to, but we'll be going back in the summer.
No, it's exciting. I mean, because it's exploring your own self, your spirituality, Mother Earth, the universe. You're exploring other energies, which is a really exciting field. However, it does show there are more things in the paranormal than what the books or the teachers speak of. I mean, I've got to come to the next question. I can't. Have you ever experienced poltergeist activity?
I think this is a very...
Apart from Chris.
It's a difficult one. I've been to people's properties who've asked for help in a rescue mediumship side who have reported poltergeist activity. And for me, I've never sat there and watched it occur. Now, I've saw the odd little things move on tables, balls and the like, but then you can put that down to someone walking around and knocking it. But there was a property I went once where there was a lot going on, and it is quite personal to the person who went to the house, so I can't really go in much detail. But they did have young children in the house, and she told me that one night, basically, she'd had a big argument with her younger daughter, and her daughter was just come up to the teenage years. So for when we look at somewhere, because I always evaluate before we go into a property, I find out the details, the age, the children, the history, everything. So one thing you do find is that poltergeist activity is reported a lot more when there are young females coming to that age of puberty. It's just whether it's 100% that is the link, it's questionable. But it does tend to occur a lot more in that circumstance. So anyway, the mum's gone to the door. They've had this argument. She's come away. When she's gone back to the bedroom, she's sort of trying to calm the situation down. The daughter's still really angry. There's a cabinet on one side of the wall, and the actual doors of the cabinet have physically come off the hinges and not just dropped, but literally flew across the room. Now, when I went into the house, there was... a lot of what had gone in the house was residual energy from the past. I think a lot of tension within the family. It wasn't a haunting as per se, because a lot of what was going on was family members of this person who were there at a difficult time in her life. It was the atmosphere. You could literally cut it with a knife. It was very thick. There was so much going on, and I think for me, it's still one of them things that I haven't witnessed. I can't say that I've witnessed guaranteed poltergeist activity. I've been into properties where it's reported and I've helped in them situations. And as morbid as it sounds, I still think after everything I've experienced, I want to experience an Enfield haunting style. I want to go into a house one day and I want to be able to help someone, and I want to see all... Because I don't need evidence for me that spirit exists, because I have my own evidence. But I would like to experience that other side, and I would love to. Obviously, first and foremost, it's about helping someone. But at the same time, in a selfish way, there is still that rush of that's what I'd like to experience.
I mean, the reason I asked the question is, as a young child, I've witnessed poltergeist activity. And I tend to follow the same lines as you, the hormonal, teenage, especially female, residue energy. And because we class ourselves as limited beings, we don't realize what we do with our energy. I think it's now in 2021, it's definitely proven in Russia, psychic energy, what it can do. If you get a very angry hormonal teenager, things fly. And I think there is a greater awareness. I mean, way back in the day, they would bring in the exorcist and say the demon has you. Obviously, that's way back in the day, thank goodness. Maybe there is still places in the world that still happens. I do hope not.
There is.
However, however, it's scientifically now as well. There are many theoretical scientists who are looking at these energies and how they affect, and especially going through quantum physics, we're energy beings. So if you change in your frequency, if you're it's like, if we all go in a room together and you've got some really low vibrational, I hate the world, walk in the room and go, ooh, you automatically sense it. Well, imagine if you've got a hormonal, I'm very angry attitude teenager, which we've all been, you can imagine what the energy could do. And it seems from the research I've done, it's not intentional. The child is not intentionally doing it. It happens. No. Now, it's maybe not proven. However, it's, I think it's a better hypothesis to say that than to say you're possessed by a demon and, strapped down and the exorcist comes in and, it's just energy. So that's why I found that area very, very interesting. One thing I mustn't forget to do is you've brought some tools with you, haven't you?
I have.
The request of the Sheila.
Now, when we run
what have you got?
When we run our paranormal events at your events, it's very much a more back to basics approach. So we don't go heavy on equipment. We tend to do more of board work, glass work, automatic writing, seances, human pendulums, that sort of thing. But guests still do like the odd little bit of equipment, and we have, like I say, it's very basic stuff that we have, but I do actually use it when I go into a house investigating as well. So one of our key ones is a K2 device. Now,
And what
we
does
use
that do,
these.
Chris?
Basically, it measures or it picks up on anomalies within the electromagnetic field. So if a spirit, for example, if this is all working well and good as it should be, so if you press that, see, oh, there we go, to the lights now, so you can see that the lights light up. So if I was to hold it to my mobile phone or anything, it'd go crazy right up to the top. So the idea is to make sure everyone's got the mobile phones off or on flight mode. You figure out in the room where sort of like the hot points, like electrical appliances and stuff are, and you know to stay away from there. But that in itself, in theory, what it will do is when a ghost or spirit or whatever you want to say enters that field of energy around there, it should be picking up and it use the lights. So we've had it on events where it's great in a sense for that, because you can, when you get a really strong connection with spirit, we can able to say, okay, can you take it to the orange light? And it'll go to the orange light. Or can you go to the red light? On the flip side, of it as well, when I've gone into people's homes, there was someone's home I went into last year, and she basically said that she got into a room one night and there was a child sat on the end of the bed with its head facing upwards, and I was picking up on it and knew that in my heart, I absolutely knew completely that what she was saying was correct, because I sensed this little girl in that spot. And it's great because it can like reiterate a point for someone that they're not incorrect, because I went around the whole room and it was a normal measurement. I went around the whole bed. There's nothing electrical around this bed at all. Whole bed, went around, stayed at a very steady sort of flow, and I put it in the exact point where she said the little girl was sat, and it just spiked, and it was redlining, and there was. I think it's very good for confirmation for people when it's visual.
Yeah, I suppose it's like a scientific tool, giving you some validation, giving you a direction as to where and what you're going. Have you ever recorded spirit voices?
We have, and it's very. I think we still have one recording now, but it's very much like images as well. There's a lot of the time where you can get something you think it's fantastic, and you'll show everyone that's there, and then look, listen to this, and you get back home and you'll go, "Where's it gone?"
Yeah.
Where's it gone? It's literally not there. So yes, we have, and yes, we have got pictures, and so the answer is yes, we have got this. We have got things that we can't explain on an audio and visual.
I've heard this. I have seen documentaries on this, and I've heard the playback when they've captured it. And I think, again, that would be me. If I heard that and I was in a place, I'd be so freaked out. I don't care how spiritual I am. My humanness would kick in. I'm out of here. A bit like Chris Shearer down there, on his red eyes, his red lights. I have to do this to him today, guys. I have to. But I would find that so scary. I mean, that would. I mean, as a medium, you can hear them, fine, but that's that is a no-no for me.
Because I'm sure the viewers, someone who's in on sort of investigations, ghost hunting and things like that. I know you talk about the traditional methods, but you missed out table tipping and the experience of that. The glass work. And also I wanted to ask you, what's your favourite method? I know that you like to, obviously I've been with you, but for the ones that don't know you, your favourite method is sometimes sitting there and feeling it for yourself. But other than that, in terms of using something, the equipment, what's your favourite method? Do you like the glass, the board, the table?
So like you just probably picked up on my main thing on a night, and I wouldn't call it a showpiece, but one of the things that the rest of the team tend to take guests off, and I'll usually do the management on a night, and I'll be the one walking around on my own in these dark places, and I always do the seances in an evening are always led by me. I enjoy doing the seances. Apart from that, I like glasswork. I do like glasswork. Boards. To me, I have a different view. A lot of people have this great fear of what the Ouija boards, spirit boards. To me, it's just another communication device that you need to handle and manage in the right way and show respect. And as long as you do, you won't have any issues. Now, I know people have completely different things. You can go into a whole hour on boards, and so won't. But one of the other things I'll pull out of here, and I know Chris is quite interested, these is like spirit dice. And these are fantastic. So the very first time I used these, we were on a paranormal event, and I had been picking up on something down in a cellar of this place, and I very strongly had the name John in my head. Throughout, I had this name John. So I told my partner and the people around me, I keep getting this name John. So we went upstairs, we were introduced back to another part of the group, and we were introduced to the spirit dice, and we were basically just told, roll the dice, try and keep them close together, and put all the intent that you've got to find something from it, put your intent out and see what you get back. So got the dice, first roll, put it out in front of me, and 4 letters, JOHN.
Wow.
And I'm not talking about one over here, one over there, one over there.
No.
One in an almost perfect line, not straight, but a bit of a wiggle, all connected. The name John, and from that point, my partner absolutely loves them. She uses them on every event, and it's good to get people involved. I mean, one of the things is not everyone wants to do board work, not everyone wants to do glass work. But when it's something like a dice, it comes across as harmless in a sense, and it encourages people, and it's a fun way of communicating, and it's a lighter way to get other people involved. So like entry-level people who come to events for the first time might not want to go and sit on their own, or they might not want to do boards, but a bit of dice never hurt anyone, sort of thing, so they're happy to get involved in that. So I really like them. So that's one of my favourite things.
I also ask, sorry to interrupt, I'm just looking at the time. So once we're all back to normal, when we all get back out there again, will you be having eerie events up and running again? And
I hope so. The eerie events for me, when we set it up, we left Richard's team, we set it up, and we obviously brought Chris and Karen in. And for me, eerie events it's not a business to me. I do what I do with eerie events because, one, I love the paranormal investigations. I love getting new people into it and new people involved and new experiences. So the way we do it is we look for new locations that are a bit off the beaten track, that aren't done every week by other groups. And one of the main key points is we basically, what we charge is basically for the location and for our food. And for the refreshments. We don't overcharge. We try and keep the prices as low as possible, and we just want to include as many people as we possibly can and bring them into.
I think it's good to get it out there. I mean, obviously we had spoken before, and I did say, once it's all back to normal, I am so going to do a documentary on eerie events. However, I will be filming you. However, it must be stated, I will be worse than Chris. I'll be behind everybody. I'll have crosses. I'll have everything I need. No, I won't.
Because Chris stays awake though.
Sorry?
He didn't tell us the story he didn't tell us the story when he went to sleep somewhere.
Well done, Chris. What happened, Chris? What happened, dude? We still have some time.
Once again, I won't mention any names, but me, Chris, and Joanne, my partner, we went on a paranormal investigation on our night off sort of thing. It was, so we paid to go with an event with someone else, and it was the location that was somewhere that I knew very well and had been there before. And the guy who was running the event was a medium, and he wasn't interested in anything that was going on in the location. It was a bit of a look at me, I'm the centre of attention, to the point where I'd said to him, well, I'm picking up on this over there, and he was going, no, you want to ignore that because we're doing this at the moment. And I think when spirit's trying to make contact with you, don't ignore them. That's a privilege that spirit's trying to make contact with you, so you're not ignoring them. So I wasn't impressed. We weren't very impressed. He was doing all sorts of experiments of his own, and everyone, I think his sort of regular crowd really bought into it, but we didn't. And I found what he'd done rather disrespectful to the spirits in the location. So anyway, long story short, I'd had enough. I went and sat in the corner of this. It's a big old church. I went and sat right in the corner of this church on my own because I was so done. So everyone else is still engaging over in the corner. I didn't know what was going on. Well, I found out shortly after. Everyone's there, and the medium turned around. Can anyone hear that growling noise? There's a deep growling noise. So they're all really like, oh, and they're all going, yeah, I can hear it, I can hear it. No one had picked up on it. Joanne come over. No one else had picked up on it, luckily enough. And Chris come over, and it was me. I was asleep in the corner snoring. But we made this big thing.
Oh my God!
So,
I mean, that's a wonderful story. Thank you, Chris, for raising that, because we need the humour like that. It's the humanness about us. Yeah, I can just visualize that. I can imagine all that. Oh my God, yes, and
it really was. It was all that. Oh wow, what's this? It was the big spectacle.
Yeah. Oh bless, that's wonderful. Now, Chris, obviously, if people, many people are interested in the paranormal. Still, many people have fears. They don't quite understand, and I'm one of them. So, how can people get hold of you, either for future ghost tours or paranormal events or advice or groups? Where can they get hold of you for information?
Eerie Events has pages on, and you can find it just by putting @Eerie Events in the Facebook search. We've got a page on Facebook, Twitter, and even Instagram, I think. I do have my own personal page, but it's down at the moment. So if anyone does want to get in contact, feel free to get through to the page. My own profile on Facebook's quite often about on there, so I often have a lot of people sending pictures and audio through to me to ask what my opinion on it is, and I'm always happy to have a look at it for anyone.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So you can either send that through the page or to my own personal, or once my Facebook gets set up again. And my own Facebook tends to be more for the rescue mediumship side of things. But at the moment, while it's offline, then it's fine to go through Eerie Events. Any sort of issues like that, I can direct anyone where to go.
If anyone needs a rescue medium, they can come via that link as well on the interim to your other pages up. Now, Chris, I've got a final question, and you don't know I'm going to ask this because I'm sneaky, and I don't know what answer I'm going to come back. Okay. As you would have guessed, I'm slightly weird. Through your years of working, in the paranormal or mediumship, talking to other energies, may I ask, have you ever encountered or thought you've encountered another being, not a deceased relative, but other consciousness, other beings? Has that ever happened yet? If not, it will soon. Has it ever happened yet where you've really thought?
I've got to say,
sure.
I've got to say yes. I'd say quite strongly, I believe, yes. I have. I've not got time to go into it all now, but maybe on another occasion we can chat again. In the future. But 100% yes. Yes, I have.
Yes. We have a future show coming up where someone who specializes in this area will talk about how the intuitives sometimes can recognize other beings, but it's still early days yet. So we need to be informed and share these stories. So it would be wonderful, Chris, if we called you back on a future show, and specifically put that in the diary, Christopher Shearer, specifically to talk about the energies of other beings other than the Homo sapien. This is where I'm going to. Now, before we close today, we just had to get it all excited again because we're definitely going through the paranormal weeks at the moment. And next week, Chris, I'm going on my auto cue here. I just spun it all. I got so excited with that answer. I've lost where I was. We have a real witch, don't we, Chris?
We do.
Come on, Chris. Next week, we have a real witch, don't we?
A real witch called Laura.
Called Laura. Look, this is live TV. I'm on my auto cue. Here we go. Look at that one I made earlier. Next week we have the lovely Laura Jane Goff. Me and Chris had a great conversation with her, didn't we? She is absolutely amazing, very down to earth, a beautiful soul, and very soft and lovely energy. Now, Laura, she also runs ghost hunts. She has her own little thing, and it's been running successfully. However, that's not we won't be talking about that next week. We're going to see her witchy side, and she's going to talk about when her witchy side began from a very small child. She's going to share her journey, and she's going to share many experiences in the witchy world, and she's going to try and inspire other people who are unsure, who are still in the closet, so to speak. They don't want to come out yet because they're still saying, oh, I can't, we're going to be put in an asylum or burnt at the stake. So she's very informative. She has a wonderful way of explaining witches. So we look forward to Laura next week, don't we, Chris? And Chris Fowler, thank you so much for shaming and naming Chris Shearer.
No problem.
I am your friend.
I've got to give credit where it's due. Sorry, while you talk about Laura, it was actually Laura who introduced us to the dice. I know Laura. Laura is absolutely fantastic, and you'll have a great show with her next week. She's so knowledgeable.
Oh my goodness. How about synchronicity there? I never knew that. Look at that. That's synchronicity.
It is.
So, Chris Fowler, thank you so much. We will have you on another show in the future talking about what we spoke. We thank you for joining us today. We thank our viewers and everyone that's logged in and watching the show live. And you can also watch it. It's on YouTube. Yes, Chris? YouTube as well. You can watch it.
Yeah, there might be a bit of a pause in the video. I do apologise, but I had to sort something out on the live stream.
Yeah, we had people that needed attention. Yeah. So we look forward to seeing you next Saturday, where the weekend begins. We thank our guests, the wonderful paranormal rescue medium investigator, Chris Fowler, and we'll see you all next week. Goodbye from me.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks very much, Chris.
Bye. Bye.
Goodbye, all.
Bye.
Bye.